supplement, is it the supplementary agenda? Where is the correct one?
On council.
It's on the desk, okay. So the correct one is on your desk, and apologies from everyone for that. So, who wants to, David?
Thank you, Leanne. We have 3 bylaws that are being discussed this morning. The first one is the waste management bylaw, and it was probably the easiest one that the hearings panel had to deal with. It essentially deals with the terms and conditions for our curbside collection, and the panel met and recommended that the the proposal be adopted. We only had 3 submissions to that. One was from ECAN, which was totally in support of the proposal, and there were a couple of others that were outside the scope of the bylaw and terms and conditions. So I'll move that we adopt the Waste Management Bylaw 2009.
Right, now this is the issue, Yanni, that you've raised. So it seems from advice that we're receiving that that just moving an amendment at the meeting today may not be the best way to do it, but I think we should provide the intent by way of an amendment to this resolution today, so that council staff can come back with a proposal. It seems to me that what you're trying to achieve is that for people who whose properties are directly related to the area where the waste collection management area operates, that allowing for an opt-in on the side of their property that connects would be a way of resolving it. And if we could get staff to come back with a solution that allows that to happen, I think that wasting a lot of time on a consultative process when they came during the LTP process with a very simple statement of the problem, but we need staff to be working on a solution for that.
I think it would be useful for staff just to explain kind of where things are at. The resolution that we've already passed as a council was that the council enable curbside bin collection within central city residential zones. So we've already got a formal resolution that asks that to be enabled. I've had some conversations with staff in the morning tea break. I think they're working through a wider consultation about waste service collection within the entire central city.
Yeah, well, we don't need to waste our time on that now. You know, like, I want to know, can we get a resolution to the issue that's already been raised in the LTP process?
Yeah, that's what I want to know too, but I think it would be useful just to hear from staff over the timing and the sequencing that's proposed, because we may have a view on that, or we might want to just get a report back at the next meeting.
All right.
It's up to you.
Far away.
Hi, I'm this one, okay. I'm Tamara, I manage the solid waste contracts for the city.
To the microphone, it might be easier for you. Yeah, thanks.
And we have certainly taken on board the resolution that came out of the consultation process through the long-term plan, and have a process around that. In speaking to Yanni today, Councillor Johansson rather today, we have discussed the fact that we are going to do some consultation to sense test the proposals that we're putting out around servicing the central city, and we would suggest that once we have a clear idea as to what the central city residents want, that would be the time to amend the terms and conditions. So we have written to all of the submitters to the long-term plan process and advised them that we will have a system in place for them by 1 July 2016. Currently though, the way the terms and conditions of the bylaw are written fit the current situation for them. and we are able to amend the terms and conditions just by a resolution of council. So once we have a clear direction on exactly what the service is that we're providing for them, then we think that would be an appropriate time to amend the terms and conditions.
So do we have to wait, though, for that broader consultation on the whole area when it is clear that there's a very small area which is right up hard against the, if the line was moved to the river, then they would be in the area, but they have the capacity to put their wheelie bins out on the street that is collected, but their technical legal address is on the other side, the street next door, which is just outside. So do we have to wait for them? Because it seems to me that a solution, an opt-in solution for them, could potentially be arranged ahead of the broader consultation about the inner city area. Because I understand why you'd want to do a proper consultation around the inner city generally, but on this particular issue, is it not possible for us to move a resolution that would enable you to come up with a solution for them now?
Well, under council's financial policy, there's a defined area that's specifically excluded from the curbside collection contract. So they're in what we call our inner city collection area, which is a user pays bag system currently. So we've spoken to our contractors and got some indicative prices around a review of the inner city area. They've indicated that they would rather we do this in a organised fashion rather than a piecemeal fashion, and that we do one review of the whole area. And we got a submission, I understand, from Fletcher Living around the Eastern Frame developments, which is very high density, and which, to be frank, would be a disaster if we had a couple of hundred wheelie bins lined up on the street around some of those properties. So we do see it as important to do a slightly wider picture, but we are open to direction.
So I understand why a contractor wouldn't want this to be done in a piecemeal fashion, but if there is a solution for a very small number of residents who are immediately the area of the collection, on an opt-in basis, couldn't we, are we without the possibility of even making a shared facility available to that set of units that could be wheeled out onto, what's it, Peterborough Street? Is that the street? It's Kilmore Street, yeah. Because Kilmore Street is in the collection area, but Peterborough isn't. Is that right? Have I got that right? It's Cambridge Terrace, sorry. Cambridge Terrace isn't. That's their technical address. But they go right onto Kilmore Street on the other side. Yes,
I'm very familiar with this particular complex and have had a number of conversations with the residents there.
So have a number of councillors.
Yes, I understand that. That complex is slightly more complicated than it might appear, and that while the ground level occupants of that complex are very pro wheelie bins, the ones that live on the upper floor units are slightly less pro. I think there would, firstly, our financial policy does specifically exclude them, so we do need to amend that, or council does need to amend that, and our financial policy advisor has been working on something that we believe does address the issues around the inner city collection, both those that wish to receive the same level of service as everyone else in the city, and those for whom it's not practical. But as I said, we are open to direction.
Sort of kind of don't know where to go with it.
I think if you look at the central city, there's a number of new residential developments that are going in. So there is a wider issue about how we
The
respond to that.
overarching issue needs
I
to be
think the
done.
key thing is if you look at this map of where the current central city collection is, I mean, I think it's fair to say that there's a whole area that's like south of Litchfield that makes, it's all commercial, no residential, and yet they get the residential bin service, and there's residential areas that get the non-residential service, so it does need a tidy up.
Yeah.
I just thought, like, as we've done with businesses in temporary recovery premises, they can opt into the curbside collection. So can non-profit organisations who have their rates remitted, they can opt in. So I just don't quite understand what the hard thing is. If someone says, I'd like to opt into the service and I'm prepared to pay the cost of having that service, where the trucks go past, why that would be such a big issue. Is it because you could get too many people opting in and not have the contractor be able to respond, or is it just a financial thing from our systems that they can't record who's opted in? I just don't understand why that would be such a difficult thing.
Operationally, it's not a particularly difficult thing. The issue for us is around sort of doing it once and doing it properly. Also, I'm not sure where we would stand in terms of policy, because as I said, these people are in an area that are specifically excluded from the service. So a sports facility is in an area that's entitled to the service, they just don't pay the rate for the service. So once they pay the cost of the service, it's fine. But this particular group under our current financial policy is specifically excluded.
Vicky.
Can I just suggest going forward? We've had a submission on this at the long-term plan and a lot of follow-up since it. Could we possibly, just while we do the entire review, and I've got no problem with doing the entire review, just actually have a policy that says where residents are in a street that adjoins the residential bin collection, those residents are free to opt in?
That was my original question.
So could we be that simple?
You're saying that because of the financial policy that we can't do that, but
I'm saying I don't know the answer to that question
Okay,
from
well,
the financial policy point of view.
Well, from a
can we?
financial policy, there's
Well,
only a few
but that's what I'm
streets.
saying is, can we move an amendment that says request staff to report back to the next council meeting with a response to a potential temporary solution to the property between Kilmore Street and Cambridge Terrace. So we'll specifically target the set of ones that we know. We're not talking about making it mandatory for everyone who's in the complex. We're talking about making it opt-in for people who can put their wheelie bins on Kilmore Street. So we're not talking about sending the wheelie bin collection into Cambridge Terrace. We're just talking about making that opt-in provision available to those that want to wheel a bin out to the other side. And it might be that part of the temporary solution would be a shared service across a number of units that might want to opt in together and have, sort of one set of wheelie bins for those that want to opt in, or a large set for them. So a temporary solution. So it's not a piecemeal solution in the sense that this would be permanent. It will be temporary until we get a resolution to the central city collection area. Yeah? Phil?
Can I just raise another issue, and I don't expect an answer today at all, but it's just really, when the review is being done, how the issue for older people who choose to stay at home and to have their medical care at home, and where they might have quite serious incontinence problems and have originally purchased or asked for a small red bin and in fact need a much larger one, and the cost of that for some people is very steep. So it's just how as council we might manage that issue, given that the District Health Board policy is ageing in place and we've got an ageing population. I'm just flagging that really for the future, for the review. I don't need any immediate answer now or even till early next year when the review's being done. Well, right now we can, but I'm also suggesting that longer term, we need to look at it from a broader perspective than just that
Well,
fund.
it's a subsidy for health-related reasons, and I think we actually have to separate it from the contractor issues and the count. We wouldn't do it as a direct subsidy, because you'd have a contractor having to decide whether or not a person qualified. Well, they don't do that.
No, I agree, and it's a
Yeah.
wider issue
Oh,
around our
sorry.
policies.
Yep, sorry, maybe I'm wrong.
No, not at all. If I may answer that though, we actually do have a relationship with WINS, with people that have significant issues. So if they've originally gone for a small 80-litre rubbish bin, as an example, WINS cover the cost through a special process. We work closely with the CDHB on this too, to confirm that this is a genuine request, and they cover the cost to a standard size rubbish bin.
So I understand that. I think it's wider than those, though, who'd be eligible for a WIN subsidy too.
Yeah. David and then Glenn.
Look, we had a bylaw review that was looking at curbside collection rules across the city, and maybe the answer to this is to actually look at point 1 in the attachment B, which is the definition of where we're going to collect, and if I'm sort of reluctant to see the bylaw not approved, but maybe there is a recommendation to review point 1 in some manner to accommodate the area that we're talking about. We are talking about, certain circumstances here where rates remitted properties, permanent dwellings on non-rateable land can apply to opt in to the curbside delivery service. So I can't see why we couldn't be able to use that provision to allow these people to opt in.
Yeah, that's what we really need staff to report back on though, because what I'm hearing from staff is a reluctance to actually make an amendment.
How many wheelie bins are we talking about?
How many units are we talking about? I mean, in the total in the complex. I'm only talking about the one complex.
If you looked at the complexes that have...
No, that complex.
Okay.
How many units are in that complex?
I think there's about 20, there might be 25.
And what we're hearing is that the upstairs ones don't want to opt in, so we're probably talking about maybe a dozen properties.
And it's probably the only unique one. There might be one or two others. It'll be the only one that actually has a property frontage to the existing curbside collection, rather than simply just having a frontage to the inner city one. So it's unique in that regard too, that it's on the triangle.
That's why we're only talking about this one, is because it's right onto the collection area at the moment, and I think, but I'm kind of not wanting to. I'm trying to find a way through this that gives staff the ability to report back with a response. We don't have to amend the bylaw. What we've heard is that we can do it by way of resolution, amend the terms and conditions. So I'd rather that they come back to us on the terms and conditions with a temporary solution, which doesn't require us to review our entire financial policy in that regard.
Right, well, perhaps the move forward then is to actually approve the bylaw now and then ask staff to...
I want us to adopt the terms and conditions of the Waste Management Bylaw 2009, and I want us to request staff to report back to the next council meeting with a response to the potential for an opt-in provision for wheelie bin collections as a temporary solution for the residential complex on Cambridge Terrace, which has a frontage on Kilmore Street.
And then there's the wider...
the complex at 281 Cambridge Terrace.
And then the wider...
called Julian Courts.
There is the wider
And then you don't need the
consideration
frontage on
of
Kilmore
the
Street.
inner city collection to other areas will be reviewed through July next
That's
year.
a separate issue. So, and if you're comfortable with this, David, I'm going to get you to move the adoption and then second, request that staff report back. So we don't need to do it by way of an amendment.
Okay,
We can
I'm
make it
comfortable
part
with
of the motion.
Yep,
You happy with that?
Yes.
Glenn?
Oh, thank you. Just a plea to, in the scope of that review, please to look at discretion. So I'm finding...
What review? What
of
review
this-
are you
these
talking about
terms
now?
and conditions, a report on the terms and conditions. Okay, this is the review, all right.
Consultation of the terms and conditions.
Okay, with the
Yeah.
report, I'm finding this policy totally unbending. So I think if elderly residents wanting a replacement bin, e.g., don't notice it's missing for 24 hours, they're still faced with a big bill. We have all these outstanding bins in the residential red zone, and yet there's just no room to move. So can we look at some kind of please discretion in that? That would be really useful. And I acknowledge our email exchange over the other matter. I'm not bringing that up, but this is over. So if you don't notice it's missing for 24 hours, you have to pay for a new bin. But you may not think it's gone missing, but you just can't find it.
And there was a submission on that point to the hearing panel.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I have sympathy for doing that, but the hearing panel didn't decide.
Right.
Can I just clarify the issue you raised about the Fletcher Living development in the east?
Well, hang on, we're going to get an answer to Glenn's question first. So, I'm just not sure how...
Over the years, we've thrashed out this 24-hour question on a number of occasions. We're very reluctant to move on that because as soon as we bring in discretion, it takes the power off the call centre to, you know, it's then up to an individual staff member to be here to make that decision. And since we introduced that provision, we've also found that most people find their wheelie bin the next day. While the 24-hour thing is there and they're encouraged to, and they know they have to pay for it, they go round visiting their neighbours and inevitably retrieve their bin. You know, it's a very reactive thing if we do that, and we'll just create more work and dropping off bins, retrieving bins, that sort of thing.
I'm just finding there's no room for a situational approach. So in this case, the bin was stolen. The couple didn't go out to actually retrieve it within 24 hours, and I don't think necessarily everyone does do that. Couldn't find it, it was stolen, but still had to pay for a new bin. So it's just having some flexibility.
Well, okay, but it is a breach of the bylaw if they don't. You know, if you leave your bike out on the footpath for 24 hours, it's going to get stolen. We need to encourage people to take ownership of their bins, and, you know, it's been well advertised. We've reiterated the messages on a number of occasions, and just from a workload perspective, I think it would become a huge, unmanageable task.
I think that those individual cases, because they are actually, few and far between, but they are a concern. Because I agree that, I mean, you wouldn't leave property out for people to steal. You wouldn't.
If it's pouring with rain though, and you're older, you may not go out.
It might be your own property, and it gets stolen, but you're having earthquake repairs done, and so you don't go to your property for a week, and you find it gone.
But that's a different issue. You haven't left it out. So, and in those cases, I think that coming back through the council in terms of, getting funding for replacing it under those circumstances, I think there's got to be another way of dealing with that isn't, that doesn't encourage people to bring their bins back in after 24 hours. I mean, it is difficult. I mean, look, I know, but I also know that you can publicise things till you're blue in the face, and it doesn't mean anything to anyone if they hadn't received the publicity. I mean, I didn't get my bin emptied once because the lid was up a little bit. I had no idea that was the rule. I now do know, but I go past. I actually, when my neighbours have theirs up, I just go and push it down or move stuff into my bin. I just don't let anyone around me get caught like I did. So, but it just, you know, but the answer that's given is that we publicise this, people know this. Well, actually, people don't necessarily know this, so we just have to keep repeating the message. Ali?
Can I just make a comment, though, around bins being left out longer than 24 hours for people who aren't living in that property or are out of that property for repairs. And there are still a lot of people like that, and they pop round, they put some stuff in the bin, they put the bin out, they might be living elsewhere. So what I'm saying is that there may be exceptions, and this is where, in these exceptional times, possibly some discretion or something could be applied. Also, if there are tradespeople in the house, sometimes they will ask if they can put the bin out for someone but not be back the next day. So just as an exceptional example.
Yeah, but the thing is that the bylaw says you have to notify. So if you do that, I mean, that's what it's very difficult, but that's, the bylaw says you have to notify if it's missing.
It doesn't allow for an elderly person admitted to hospital and the partner has to go with them.
Yeah.
There's just no room.
Yes, that's right, but there is room within, after the decision to charge, there is room beyond that. But you take it away if you take it away from the front line, it doesn't solve the problem. There are other ways. Well, there's other ways of dealing with it outside. They've breached the bylaw. They've got to pay for a new one. Whether the council actually assumes the cost of that.
How many instances do we actually charge people for a new bin? You know, what's the occurrence around the city?
Currently, we're looking at about 100 bins a month.
We've got all the spare in the red zone.
Just to answer the comment about the red zone, we've actually made several sweeps in the red zone. We've recovered about 60% of the bins from the red zone, and my recent trips into the red zone haven't indicated a lot of bins lying around there. We've worked very closely with Sarah around the Port Hills red zone, bringing bins down off the properties that are too dangerous for general people to enter. As an example of the type of challenges we're dealing with, they brought down 70 bins on the Sunday afternoon. On the Monday when we went to recover them, there were under 50 still there. So we do have a significant issue with people utilising what they see as spare bins, and we are working on that. With regard to the questions around charging, my concerns are around the precedents we set. So if you say it's discretionary, it's very difficult to argue one case over another. Unfortunately, in this city, everyone has a story. The question is, how much do you want the ratepayers to assume? If the direction is that we don't charge, then fundamentally we can't charge anyone.
So we're saying there's 100 bins go missing a month?
No, we probably get requests of about 300 odd a month. But because they're reported within a 24-hour period, we wear the cost of those. Well, actually, the contractor wears the cost of those.
I heard a suggestion a couple of days ago that we might microchip bins. Yeah.
They've all got
That's
addresses
definitely
on them.
one of the options we're looking at.
And if we did microchip bins, and that was sort of widely known in the community that all bins were going to be microchipped, would that, and would we have the ability to track bins that were not at the right property? I mean, if they were on the property, not put out, could you do a drive down a street, checking on bins, and there was a bin behind the house that had the wrong microchip in it? Would you be able to detect that?
Correct. We have a paper coming to council in December, which will address all those issues, and yes, we are proposing that RFID tags be put in all wheelie bins, and yes, we will know if they're outside the right address.
Great.
And it will deal with all the stolen bin issues.
So
Excellent.
can I just ask though, the RFID, is it like the dog microchips? So basically, or the library book, so when you go to find the bin, you can identify it, but in terms of actually knowing where it is, if you can't find it, does it help?
No, but it solves the problem of people taking bins and taking the address off it and then using those bins.
Yes, but what it doesn't solve is if your bin's gone missing.
Yeah, no, but unless we put GPS inside the bins, we're not going to find them. We're not going to put GPS in a squillion bins.
Correct, you're correct there. It's not a GPS
No.
sensitive, it's an RFID tag.
But
when the truck picks it up, they'll know if it's at the right property.
But it does solve the problem of having the wrong bins
Which
and
I'd suggest is probably
people
the major
utilising bins that don't belong to them. Tim?
I look forward to the report in December, and I certainly hope attached to that report will be the deterrent fine or whatever. So that's really, for me, the key that will be the deterrent for people stealing and using other bins. The other thing is we are a large city, and for the fact of the matter is, if you are not living in the property and you go to your property, you fill the bin up and put it out, you've done that. You've got to take responsibility to go and get it. My mother's 89 and she puts her bin out, and when she's having trouble, the guy that comes and helps her is 92. So if they can do it, I mean, come on, we do have to take self-responsibility.
It's not always black and white.
Yeah, well,
No,
look, we can.
realise that, but we've
I
covered
really
that,
don't. We've taken 3/4 an hour on this so far. Vicky, go back to the central city and the Fletcher's development.
City, I'm actually meeting Fletcher's this afternoon, so I'm just intrigued about this one. So they will want for the residential development in the East Frame, the wheelie bin service. And I just took your comment that the last thing you wanted was the view of all of those wheelie bins as you drove through. But is there another solution in terms of shared green bins or even red bins or whatever?
Okay, so part of the work that we're doing is also excluding people. So multi-unit developments, we want to have the ability to opt out. Okay, because no developer wants to provide space on their land for 200 wheelie bins. We can't vary the curbside collection to other than a fortnightly collection. So by the developers allowing to opt out, it gives them the ability to have a commercial collection where they have a skip on site and it can be emptied daily. And this is their preference.
But but it won't be. It won't separate the types of waste.
Well, yeah, they can still have. They can still.
No. I don't want. They still can have. I want them to be required to separate.
So part of the proposal is that they will have to apply to be exempted and they will have to meet certain criteria. So our criteria would be that they would have to be consistent with Council's waste minimisation and management plan. We're only proposing this for developments over a certain size where it's very difficult to service. We were aware prior to the earthquakes around some challenges in high density developments. So we are working very hard to make sure that it's not just anyone who can choose to be excluded, that there are some very strict parameters around making sure that not everything goes to rubbish.
And that'll come back to us.
Yes.
For a decision.
Yes, once we finish the consultation.
So before it goes out for consultation, do we get to input into what's in it?
No, we're asking. We're doing a consultation about what the needs of the residents within the central city area are.
Yes, and can
And at the moment, Fletcher's, I guess, is a substitute for the people who are actually going to be living in the area that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Hang on.
So in this consultation, this is taking place when?
That's what we've been talking about.
No, I know that, but the actual
It is
proposal
taking place.
that's in there about developers, is over how many units?
So our proposal is that it will be over 20 units. I mean, that's not set in stone, but we are proposing that as one of the trigger points.
So how have you dealt with Wells Street?
I've worked very closely with a developer in Wells Street. At this point, given the restrictions of our current waste management bylaw and our current collection contract around high density. They are going to be presenting their bins in a private lane at the rear of the complex.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, as a developer, you can apply for an exemption, so you have one skip to collect all the rubbish. No, or because if it's done by cubic metres, and as a council, we can pretty well guess and have calculations on how much cubic metre of rubbish per flat, etc. And the developers will have that as well. So there would be no difference to have one big skip to collect rubbish, or 3 skips, one for organics, if you like, one for recycling and one for rubbish. So I'd imagine there could be no exemption. That waste minimalisation would have to be followed no matter what.
No, not entirely, because often some of the challenges are around safely entering into the complex to collect skips. One of the things that would free up the progression of these developments and ensure that we're still receiving diversion but also being able to process it in a safe way is that I've completely lost my train of thought there for a second, sorry about that. That doesn't happen to me very often. So the idea is that they'll be able to be collected more regularly. So under our curbside collection service, if you're entitled under the waste management bylaw to 240 litres of recycling per household, 140 litres of rubbish and 80 litres of organics. That ends up being, even if you go to skips for a 100-unit complex, a significant space that has to be put aside. So in terms of things that we would look at when we're assessing whether people could be excluded or not, would be the regularity at which they were emptying and the amount of capacity they were providing. So you could significantly shrink that if you're emptying it every day, as an example.
But saying that, and not that I'm a pessimist or anything, but if I were a developer and I was thinking, right, I want to get an exemption, so if I design my complex to make it quite difficult for a truck to get in, therefore that would give me an edge over getting exemption. Rather than saying, a council saying, well actually to gain exemption or to put this in, we need you to ensure that you have good access. We do it with supermarket car parks, for instance. Why wouldn't we do it with a complex? I realise it's not your area, but that's the rule that they would be following, surely.
Well, in the council city plan, there definitely are minimum requirements around waste. Unfortunately, the advice I've received from the planners and a lot of the developments I've seen currently, they're submitting that they will provide less waste and that the impacts will be less than minor, which I tend to disagree with. But I've been advised that waste isn't one of the things their consents would be rejected on. So what we're trying to do in some ways is to recognise the limitations we're operating under and come up with the best possible solution for the situation. In addition to that, a number of the developers that I have spoken to, and I don't get to speak to all of them, to be frank, I only get to speak to the ones that are proactive, have been really on board in terms of wanting to work to address these issues.
And that's great, but it's interesting that to get exemption actually has nothing to do with your waste. It has more to do with access to remove the waste for the contractor rather than the process of waste itself. I'm just kind of surprised by that.
Well,
but,
no,
you know,
have I got this wrong? I don't know. But if we did nothing, if you didn't consult with anyone and we did nothing, they would be into mixed bags collection. They would be into the bag collection because they'd be inside the zone. Unfortunately, the eastern frame isn't inside the inner city collection. Oh, I see.
Issues. The Wells Street one gets the normal 3-bin system, and they don't want it because they get charged for it when they say, actually, we don't actually want it because we've got high density in a confined space. We'd rather have a different, well no, but this is what their submission was. We don't want to pay for it because we actually want to do it a different way. Then you've got the eastern frame, which is ironically in the inner city collection zone, so the plastic bags, which is going to be residential, but doesn't have access to the residential curbside service. So there's two different issues within those things.
So the eastern frame is covered by,
The inner city collection, which is the plastic bag system.
but that's what I just said.
No.
No, the eastern frame, unfortunately,
Is outside.
is outside of the inner city collection, but 281 Cambridge Street is right
Yeah.
on the edge.
Right. So Yanni, that's not what you just said, isn't it?
There's the map. I can show you where the inner city collection goes. It's the grey line, and there's Latimer Square, and here's the eastern frame. That is definitely in the central business district curbside collection.
Part of it may be, but unfortunately Wells Street wasn't.
No,
So
but-
there's
No,
definitely...
no, but,
Wall Street's not the eastern frame.
no, but the eastern frame, I'm trying to understand whether the eastern frame,
Well, a point of order here, aren't we sort of straying from the subject
Well, no,
a fair
well-
amount now? We're here, we've got a resolution to address Cambridge Terrace. We're hearing that we're having a complete review by the 31st of July, June, 30th of June next year. And I think we're actually straying way away from the
it
the
seems
point
to
of issue at
me
the moment.
that the eastern frame, except where it's on the, the whole of the eastern frame is in the central business district daily rubbish collection area. Unless this map's out of date.
No, the collection map isn't out of date, unfortunately. It's a very historic document. I apologise. I understood that Wells Street was part of the Fletcher Living
No, I
Eastern
don't
Frame
want to talk
development.
about Wells Street. It's got nothing
so-
to do with Wells Street.
Yeah, different yeah. So I'm not entirely sure where the Eastern Frame is, actually.
Oh, it's between Manchester and Madras.
Then it will be predominantly within the inner city
So
collection.
what I'm saying is that unless you do what you're doing and bring an amendment to the council, when these are built, they'll be covered by bags, not by a proper system of collection and disposal, our waste management process.
Currently, that would be correct, yes.
Yes, and so that's why it's really important that we get it right in the central city. Sorry, it was worth just getting that clarified because I don't want anyone to think that this is actually about making things worse. Actually leaving it the way it is couldn't be worse for the city's
I agree,
waste
but
management.
we've already heard that we're having a complete review of the
Yeah.
central city collection process.
Which is why it's important. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll move to the, I've got a mover, why am I there? Councillor East has moved the motion. Do I have a seconder? Pauline, eh?
So I'm happy to second it.
Oh, okay, Yanni second. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. We move on